Israeli Zionist project. And they are their own worst enemies because of their racism, because of their hatred of Palestinian people, because of their superiority complex for Jewish-only Israeli citizens. All of this is self-destructing for Israel. Already major international human rights organizations have, through, very, very detailed research, come to the conclusion that Israel is nothing less than an apartheid state. We also have the advent of social media, so the kind of manipulation of mass media is limited, and we have a lot more activists using social media platforms.
The Steering Committee for the Israeli Apartheid Resistance Week and the Boycott Movement, BDS, announced to launch its activities of Apartheid Resistance Week under the title United Against Israeli Apartheid, which will be held in Gaza on the 15th of this month, accompanied by more than 250 cities around the world. To talk more about the importance of world solidarity for ending Israeli apartheid in Palestine, I have with me from South Africa, solidarity activist, Mr. Naazim Adam. Welcome to our program, sir.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Usama, it's good to be on Palestine TV and to be with you again. Warm greetings of solidarity from the people of the Palestine Solidarity Movement in South Africa, the freedom fighters and former anti-apartheid activists in our own country who now make the core of the Palestinian solidarity in Southern Africa and who have been mobilizing generally across Africa to build the solidarity movement and to take forward the struggle of the Palestinian people.
Yeah, you're welcome, Mr. Naazim, and my first question to you is concerned with the statement issued today by a mayor of an Israeli colonial settlement, Bitar Elite. It is built in the occupied West Bank. The mayor is Meir Rubinstein, who said that Palestinians should be denied access to Jewish buses, whether they have the Palestinian ID or they have the Israeli ID. How closer such statements bring Israel to the international definition of apartheid?
It's an absolute straightforward racist decision, because it's discriminating on the Palestinian people just because they are not Jewish. It privileges Jewish people in the both occupied territories and Israelis to say that non-Jewish people have less rights, and that is apartheid par excellence in its definition. But it's also showing us that they are losing the plot in a sense, because even under South Africa, by the mid-80s, this kind of what we called petty apartheid, where blacks can't sit on certain benches, can't use certain buses, can't go to certain beaches. That kind of petty apartheid was eroded quite early, because there was no sense in that kind of racial discrimination. It's a structural racism that took a lot longer to deal with. But by denying one race group just a simple thing like riding on a bus, we saw this in the United States, in the civil rights movement as well. This is petty. It's not petty, it's real, it's hurtful, but we refer to it as petty racism and petty apartheid. It's like, it's like kids on the playground. You can't play with us because you look different, because you are Palestinian and I am not, and I am better than you. So that kind of racism is the par excellence definition of what the Afrikaners designed for South Africa to keep different race groups apart and not for them even sit on a bus together. It's absolute the core example of apartheid in South Africa, at least up until the 80s.
Yes. Mr. Naazim, Israel today is an apartheid regime, colonial settler apartheid regime, and because the world is aware of that, or most of the world is aware of this fact, there is going to be, from tomorrow, starting tomorrow, Apartheid Resistance Week, and 250 cities around the world are participating in this week. that would be launched in Gaza. So do you think that such momentum is promising? Are we going to have the international solidarity movement like the one that was on the side of South Africa to defeat apartheid?
I think the international solidarity movement is critical as a weapon in the arsenal of the Palestinian people in destroying, in what will ultimately lead to the end of the apartheid settlement, colonial settler state that is Israel. We know that in South Africa there were four elements to our struggle. One was obviously the mass mobilization of people on the ground in protest and resistance, and that gained momentum with the formation of trade unions and so forth, workers' rights, women's rights, the formation of the United Democratic Front. This was a major force within the country. The second element was an underground sort of political, mobilizing, educational movement that worked with activists, that trained activists, and that in many senses drove the struggle within the country and outside. There was obviously also the armed struggle, as all anti-colonial organizations and resistance movements have had throughout history against colonialism. There is the need for an armed resistance to take forward the struggle, but those are all strategic. I think including in that strategy is the international anti-apartheid movement that played a huge role in isolating South Africa and rendering it a pariah state. With 250 cities across the globe coming out united against apartheid, united against racism. And I think that is critical, especially in the context of world politics today, where Europe is sort of ganging up against anyone that's not European, that's can be more humanistic to Ukrainians who are blonde and blue-eyed and fair-skinned than Syrian refugees or African refugees. There's a huge race problem in the world. So the struggle against apartheid in Israel is actually a world struggle against racism. And our international solidarity needs to ease. It doesn't need to. I mean, almost all activists that I work with understand that ours is a global struggle for better values and a better world. And that central to this is the liberation of Palestine. So yes, without a doubt, the international solidarity movement is a key pillar in the struggle for the end of apartheid in Palestine, in occupied Palestine, in Palestine itself, and we need to increase that. Yes. Some of the difficulty is that we do not necessarily have the government. So we have a lot of reactionary, dictatorial governments who are self-serving. But the people on the ground, there's overwhelming support for Palestine and for the liberation of Palestine. Yes. I mean, we were just recently at a general kind of Ramadan, pre-Ramadan kind of festival that happens in South Africa. And there were people from all races, all religions, all cultures that came to this sort of fair. And it's amazing on the ground, the positive responses we got for Palestine from ordinary citizens. So there is a strong citizens movement within civil society for Palestine.
And Mr. Naazim, I think you agree with me that the international solidarity movement is getting more momentum these days and in the future, because now the Israeli face is no longer covered. Many peoples around the world used to buy the Israeli story that Israel is a democratic, advanced country, while what we see today and the statements that we hear from the Israeli government officials, like the Minister of Finance, Smotrich, who called for wiping out the Palestinian village of Hawara, the Israeli mayor of the colonial settlement today calling for banning Palestinians getting into Israeli buses, Benny Gvir called for storming Al-Aqsa Mosque and the holy sites in occupied Jerusalem. This shows the real face of Israel, and this would give the solidarity movement more momentum and more power. What do you think?
No, 100%. I think we're beginning to see the dismantling of the Israeli Zionist project. And they are their own worst enemies because of their racism, because of their hatred of Palestinian people, because of their superiority complex for Jewish-only Israeli citizens. All of this is self-destructing for Israel. Already major international human rights organizations have, through, very, very detailed research, come to the conclusion that Israel is nothing less than an apartheid state. We also have the advent of social media, so the kind of manipulation of mass media is limited, and we have a lot more activists using social media platforms to challenge the Israeli narrative and the Israeli Hasbara project. And so certainly the momentum of the international solidarity movement is growing. I think that the debates are becoming more open. We're even beginning to see media outlets being challenged for their bias. And we know that for a long time, even in South Africa, we battled with media houses who would not give us a voice to challenge the kind of victim narrative that the Zionists always portray. And today, with video and evidence, we see the atrocities. We see the killing of innocent young girls coming from school, just shot for no reason. We see the attacks and the destruction of homes. We see what's happening in Sheikh Jarrah, in Silwan, in Masjid al-Aqsa, in Gaza. We're seeing all of this, and sometimes, that live kind of content of people, you cannot create a lie out of it.
Yes.
The assassination of your fellow journalist from CNN, these things are beginning to shift the public opinion very much in favor of a just solution and a just liberation of Palestine and all of Palestine.
Yeah, and Naazim, my final question to you. You saw how the Israeli delegation was dismissed from the African Union Summit. Do you think that this step would pave the way for ending Israeli breaking into many countries in the continent of Africa?
My personal opinion, Usama, is that it's symbolic because they will exclude the Israelis from observer status in the African Union. They will still try to get there. Unfortunately, that space is occupied by many government officials who are normalizing with Israel on a daily basis, buying into the narratives of technology and buying the technology to survey, to keep surveillance on their own people, to repress their own people, because Israel is good at producing technology that represses the Palestinian people. And some of these dictators, some of these illegitimate governments around Africa and the world, they want that technology. So I think that it's not going to stem that tide, not immediately. I think we need changes within governments in Africa for that to happen. I think even in South Africa, although our government, the current ANC government, a very progressive stand, we know that politics in South Africa is on a knife's edge. We've got a very difficult election coming up in 2024. We're dealing with a lot of our own challenges in the country. And international politics plays a part in those elections, and there is pressure from the Zionist forces, which could even see some more investment in trade with Israel in the years to come. But we need to continue, we need to persevere, we need to hold our governments accountable and hold them accountable for the normalization where that happens. We need to keep driving the sanctions part of the BDS movement, the divestment part of the BDS movement. We do a lot of work on the boycotts, but it's divestments and sanctions that is really going to hit hard. And we saw this, and I just want to say a little bit about this, Usama. One of the key things that we did in South Africa, and it came from all over the world, more than it came from within South Africa, was the international sports boycott. I think being a pariah, being isolated, being forced forces you to change your ways. We have a lot of athletes that want to compete, and we need to say that there's no sports washing. There's no beauty contests and cultural washing of the apartheid system. We need to build in a very strong sanctions movement against Israeli sport, and we need to work on international federations to do the Israeli apartheid settler colonial state exactly what they did to South Africa and isolate Israel from all international sporting events until Palestinians are free and free to compete as equals in the world of athletics and sport.
Yes. Mr. Naazim Adam, South Africa Palestine Solidarity activist, it has been a great pleasure having you on our program. Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure. And strength to all the Palestinian people.
Thank you.
Aluta continua.
Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. And from me, Usama Nazal. Have a nice time.